I think you're muted. Can you hear me?
Yeah, wow, we started off on a really high note. I opened the stream muted and you were late for the stream. First one of the new golden age. How's it going?
It feels like 2025. How are you?
I'm doing well, man. I'm happy to be here. Sun is shining. Doing good.
Good to be here.
Did you see the inauguration earlier today or nah?
I read the transcript. I never really watched those things. Same with State of the Union address. This one's, I'm sure, not as bad, but there's always like pauses for applause. So the State of the Union address. Have you ever seen one of those in the United States?
Yeah, no, I've seen them
My
before.
goodness, like it's 3 or 4 times as long as it needs to be, and or you can just read the transcript and it takes like 5 minutes. It's like, oh, okay, got it. So
yeah, I found it funny because he essentially started shit talking the other administration while he was like 2 feet away from the other administration, and like almost immediately into the speech, he's like, "Thank you, you guys made a good choice in picking me. Time to improve what these guys messed up," and it's just like, whoa. So that had an entertainment factor for sure.
oh yeah, I'm gonna tweet this out real quick. Give me 1 second.
Let's see. I think you're mistaking it. It's actually Mark, who is Mark Zuckerberg was checking out what's her face, Jeff Bezos' girl. I forget what Lauren Sanchez. That was actually funny. There's a bunch of memes I think that's going to come out of this. It's going to be a fun time, man. Let's see. What is Saggy saying? If at all possible, it'd be great for you guys to discuss today how you see the next few years under Trump rather than SoFi earnings. It would be nice to get a little bit more macro talk. I saw somebody also tweeted at us from the last SoFi Weekly saying we should take into account macro more. So do we want to tackle this now, or should I just favorite it and we can tackle it later?
I think that's a good place to start. I'm going to pull up something that I think will show exactly what I expect. It'll take me just a second.
Yeah, well, I can start then, and then you can jump in. I think, honestly, man, like you have a very pro enterprise administration, and that's obviously going to spur business across the board. I think it's very emblematic that the heads of corporate America were essentially all there at the inauguration, sitting front and center, like right beside the guy, essentially. You know, I tweeted this out. Like I saw in one shot Bezos, I saw Zuckerberg, I saw Sundar Pichai, and I saw Musk, and Tim Apple was also there. So that's like over $1 trillion of, net worth from just, those guys alone, not to mention the amount that they command in their companies. And so that really sends a very strong message that this is going to be a very pro business administration. And then you see all of the other, press releases, but also interviews and whatnot that Trump has done in the past around wanting to spur domestic investment and bringing back work into the US. And I think that as well is signaling that he's going to be fairly laid back, right? Like in terms of approvals, he was talking about, hey, the bigger you are, essentially, the more business and more jobs you can bring back domestically, like the quicker your approvals are going to be. You're not going to get bogged down by bureaucracy. You're not going to get bogged down by this, like BS, essentially. And we essentially want to spur more innovation in this country. And that, from a super high level macro perspective, I think that's going to be super helpful for these large organizations to actually not want to leave and not want to shelter their, money from taxes or whatnot, not want to take their operations offshore and to want to bring things domestically. And I think that's a very powerful message that the public sector is going hand in hand with the private sector in a shared common goal.
You were all serious, and if you throw out mine, it's a little bit less serious.
And this.
So if somebody hasn't seen that before, it's a meme. Somebody noticed that the pattern of the Trump meme coin, which we'll talk a lot more about. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about today too, though, in Robinhood Weekly with the guys later, with those that actually bought Robinhood at 14, unlike Tevis. But no, I think that he's going to make a huge impact on the macro here in the United States, but also internationally. One thing that I do think is going, the one piece that we can get from this, though I don't really like that token itself. I don't like that the president is pumping that. And I saw this like the moment that Trump was elected, actually, just even the night before. I'm like, this is going to be a really big win for a number of industries, and it's hard for me to figure that out. But one that it's like really going to be good for is brokerages and anything to do with crypto. There has been, we saw like this obscene flurry on the way out for Gary Gensler at the SEC and some more other organizations too within the federal government. Just a whole bunch of lawsuits and charges and fines and fees. I've never seen them, and maybe I was just not paying attention to that extent, and dropping on names that I don't necessarily even care about, like hitting everything, crypto related and brokerages and banks and just left and right. So that is very much an enforcement heavy administration under President Biden. And it's very clear from both comments that President Trump has said, and also from this meme coin itself, if it wasn't clear already before, that instead of being a very heavy enforcement, it's going to instead be regulation. They'll have regulation, they'll have parameters, they'll produce guidelines rather than just, we're going to produce some things that are very, very confusing and try to get as many fines as we can, which is just a terrible way to run a government. So I don't think everything President Trump has on the docket, I'm not excited for. I hope, there's a few things that I'm like, man, I really hope this doesn't come to fruition. And so as far as macro, like I think that things will start out really, really well, kind of like that meme coin, that things will just pump and do well. I was expecting a pullback by Inauguration Day. We got that. Earnings are very solid, and I think that calmed a lot of people. The big banks, they had blowout earnings this last week, and of course, earnings season is then fully underway over the next couple of weeks. We'll have a lot of big names that'll be sharing earnings. But no, usually leading into earnings over the last 5 earnings cycles, there's been this pattern of some weakness in the macro, especially right before earnings. And then people, when they're looking at earnings, they're like, okay, consumer is not falling apart. Recession is not on the table right now. Companies are actually posting up real solid numbers. And I'll just be kind of curious what a lot of these companies will guide for over the next couple of years, knowing rather than guessing the policies that Trump is probably laying out. But I would say it's pretty bullish initially. The big concern for me is tariffs. Are tariffs talked about too much up there in Canada, retaliatory tariffs?
Yes. I touched a little bit on this on the Friday stream, but people up here are really concerned about the tariffs because, it's a war of attrition, but obviously we have a population up here that's 1/10 of your population. And so that war of attrition is going to hit, it's going to hit a little bit harder here. Yeah. So we'll see what happens there. But 100 plus executive orders in the first 24 to 48 hours. That's, nothing to joke about, right? That man means business.
Yeah. And part of that is just, hitting the Uno reverse card on some of the things that Biden was doing in those last couple of weeks, which I know it's not President Biden. It's whoever is actually doing those things. Biden's just probably happy that he's retiring and not having to worry about any of this stuff anymore. But that's utterly ridiculous, especially when many of those things will just be reversed within a couple of days. It's no way to run a government. So I'm not wanting to delve too much into the political side, but I'm not thrilled over the last few weeks, including the meme coin itself. It just stop, guys, quit playing games. It's time to get serious. So, but yeah, no, if the tariffs do are not just a negotiating lever, but massive tariff walls come up and kind of don't really break apart NAFTA, but somewhat with our largest trading partners, and of course between us and China. The real fear, although I've seen economists say the opposite, is that will spike inflation. Now, historically, the way this has worked is when tariffs come and they're typically initiated by one nation or another. Usually, there's retaliatory tariffs, sometimes selective, sometimes not, and it can take, just like any fiscal policy, a while to be felt. So usually, that's about 2 years after the fact is when the full weight of that tariff is felt by everybody in the industry at that point. And part of the way that's going to be felt, I think, by a lot of people is inflation. That's something that there's so much as far as deregulation, as far as energy costs, as far as reducing the size and scale of government, that's deflationary or at least disinflationary. But tariffs, man, if we have a massive tariff war, that's really, really bad for the macro. And so even if you're like, okay, well, no problem if this is enacted, that's 2 years out as far as the full weight. Well, wait a minute. The markets are A, forward looking, and B, just because the full weight might not be felt for a couple of years, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be some impact even on the economy much, much sooner than that. So it's not a good thing. Like that's my biggest concern. I have some concerns also with consumer weakness and overspend. But it's not like, it's more of like something that I'm just keeping an eye on. I'm not hedging against or anything. Although I am tempted to short block. Not short, but buy puts.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to talk about, I think, the Trump meme coins. I think just in general, like, I don't understand how something like that is, like, I don't know, man. Do we want to jump into that right now?
Yeah, unless you have any other macro thoughts.
I mean, look, I think tariffs is going to pass through a big filter of they're largely used as a negotiation tactic. And I think on a whole, other countries know that they're used as a negotiation tactic. And it's really the threat of tariffs that brings people to the table because nobody wants those tariffs. And I mean, let's not kid ourselves. Tariffs hurt the US just as much as it hurts the other countries because obviously you're going to have retaliations and it's going to be a two-way thing. Now, of course, the US may be able to withstand it a little bit more than some other countries because they have a dominance in soft power, let's say, the power of their brands and the power of their products. But you can't really get to a golden age if every single one of your trading partners puts tariffs on you. So you have to meet a middle ground of you essentially bowing down to, have exemptions to those tariffs or have essentially a middle ground, right? And so if, let's say, you threaten tariffs on 100 countries, the actual countries that you will impose tariffs on might be 10% of that. I'm just spitballing, but I'm saying it's going to be a fraction of what he's threatening because really deep down, the US doesn't necessarily want, like, tariffs is a means to an end or a means to get their goal. It's not an end within itself. And so even in that negotiating position where they threaten tariffs with 100 countries, what they lose from the 10 countries that they do have two-way tariffs on, they will gain from the 90 countries that they actually succeeded in those negotiations or those threats actually made an impact. And so it's really a matter right now of, okay, there's been months and months on this campaign trail where we've seen the bark. And right now I'm just curious to see what has the actual follow-up. And that applies to Panama, which he mentioned in his inauguration speech. It applies to Greenland. It applies to Canada. It applies to all of these other, promises that he's essentially made or threats that he's essentially made under the veil of American excellence. But you can't just, I mean, sure, you can definitely probably push Canada around a little bit more because you have more leverage there. You can't do that same shit to China because of the vast volume that they have with the US as a primary trading partner. And so it's going to be a middle ground, right? And we really want to see where his focus is going to lie because generally what I think is going to happen, like, he has his hand right now in so many different policy cookie jars with regards to immigration, with regards to these deportations, with regards to like expanding the territory in Greenland and whatnot, with regards to tariffs, with regards to so many different policies. Right, the war is ending, the ceasefires, and I think he's definitely going to have his hands full where he can't really drag out, because he threatened tariffs he actually imposed tariffs his first term as well, and we sort of have a playbook of how that worked out the first time around. I think it's going to be on a bigger, broader scale the second time around, because the strength is there for them to be able to push other countries around with tariffs. But I don't think that they're going to go as far as to actually follow through on those promises, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Matt had one there. He said, for example, the Canadian New Party leader saying that we'll stop selling oil to the U.S. I think he just basically is saying, well, we can build pipelines like they were strapped by the previous party, but they'll build pipelines so that they'll actually be able to sell it to other countries instead of just the United States. The United States is okay without Canadian oil. We're the largest oil producer in the world. The fracking's really helped with that too. But I mean, I don't know that it even comes to that. I think for the most part, a lot of these are negotiation tools, and that's kind of how the market is interpreting it at the moment. But if that changes and large tariff walls are erected, don't be surprised to see inflation rearing its ugly head, which means also fewer rate cuts, which also means that it hurts a number of industries that are looking to also not only import, but also export as well. So yeah, it's something to be aware of. And I hope that, the tariffs that he enacted in his first term, I don't know. I wouldn't have even been that aggressive. I don't think tariffs are a very good tool long term, other than just as a form of negotiation. But they weren't too bad. Like if we had something like that, it's not going to crack the economy. The economy did fine under that. And, for myself, I've said this before and I'll say it again. This feels like 1924 to me. So I know it's 2025. So 101 years difference. But as far as the mechanization wave, as far as some of the same things in the macro under President Coolidge when he took over for Warren G. Harding. So there was tariffs. That was a big part of that as well. Government overspending. And so, really a deregulation and also cutting back the size and scale of the government while there is a secular force, in this case, AI instead of mechanization, really propelled the United States economy. And I think that we're going to see a lot of that over the next, probably 5 or 6 years. I think it'll actually last longer than President Trump. And it's not all because of Trump either. Like the American economy, one of the things to keep in mind too is the American economy is just resilient. So even when you have presidents that are better than others or worse than others, I mean, the American economy just tends to grow over time. And so I wouldn't worry about if you don't like President Trump, if you do like President Trump, it's okay to make hedges and everything. I just wouldn't get out of the market entirely, even if you're like, oh man, there's going to be massive tariffs and stuff. America's fine. So
yeah, look, I have no doubt that over the medium to long run, America will be fine. But I don't. Maybe it's naivete or whatnot, but I struggle to buy the idea that America can just cut off all of their imports and produce everything domestically and they'll be just fine. Because otherwise, why are they importing things at all? Like, the US, and maybe Matt can jump on and he can educate us on this because this is not my field, but there is a reason right now that the US is importing Canadian oil, whether it's like because of the type of refinement, whether it's heavy crude that comes from Alberta, that's different from, other types that are domestic. But my point is the fact that they're importing oil today, it's either an efficiency thing, it's either an ease, or it's either a price thing that is just cheaper for them to import rather than, to do it domestically. That's going to hurt both parties. It might hurt Canada disproportionately. I don't disagree with that at all. But let's not kid ourselves in saying that, well, the US is doing all of these other countries a favor by buying their products, because it's a two-way deal. Like they wouldn't have done the deals in the first place if it didn't benefit both parties. And so that's just like I don't know. I'm trying to approach it from more of a first principles perspective to say, like, why are we even in this position to begin with? Because I can mass produce something and you can mass produce something, and that's more efficient from us from an economics perspective than us producing lower levels of both things. You know, so my point is yeah, sure, the US is going to be fine. And Canada is probably going to have a higher cost of transporting all this oil to sell it to somebody else. But at the end of the day, it's a beneficial relationship for them to figure this shit out without the tariffs than it is for you to impose tariffs, because otherwise you wouldn't have even had a trade partner in Canada. You would have just made everything domestically and you wouldn't have been in this situation to start with.
So the one other thing that was related to the inauguration speech, and I sent that over to you, is this quote: "With my actions today, we will end the Green New Deal and we will revoke the energy vehicle mandate or electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto industry and keeping my sacred pledge to our great American auto workers." Is Tesla dead? I'm saying that tongue in cheek, of course. Musk has not been against having that revoked as far as the EV tax credit, $7,500 on the new, $4,500 on the older, on the used ones. I'm curious. Trump made a lot of promises and pledges.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. He said, "With my actions today," I didn't see him do anything yet. So maybe that's something that'll come up. But there's several tactics he can use to actually make it so that it still technically exists. It's just pretty much impossible to get. So like Texas even had for a little while a EV tax credit, but it was never funded. So that's one way to go about that. Some of the verbiage can also be changed, but usually these things have to pass through Congress. So there's a lot he can do through PIN, more than I think the Constitution really allows for. But that hasn't stopped any president, since I've been alive. So
Yeah, look,
so I'm kind of curious how quickly that ramps up. I'm hoping, both as a Tesla shareholder and as somebody who'd like to also get a new Tesla this year, that sticks around for at least a year.
I'm not sure on the specifics. I mean, it's just speculation until we know for sure. But like, there's broad sweeping policy changes that pass through the veil of good intentions that get stifled by all kinds of bureaucracy and never really get implemented or are feasible on that mass scale, like transitioning to 100% renewable energy, for example, or overhauling existing infrastructure in a short timeline. Like, that's all not, it's prone to having a lot of implementation concerns, not to mention all the cost concerns of it being super expensive. Like, we're facing that in Canada right now, man. Like, there's an abundance of natural resources and there's an abundance of economic prosperity that we can unlock, but it's all stifled through taxation, regulation, policy. And so just because, let's say Trump, and I'll present both sides, right? Like, on one side, you can argue that, hey, there's been progress made on this in the past 4 years, 5 years since it was introduced. And so you're essentially walking back a lot of that stuff, which is wasted effort. But then the other side is saying that just because, the Green New Deal goes away or one policy is replaced by another, like, it doesn't mean that it just disappears and nothing happens. It's probably going to be revamped or upgraded or replaced with something else entirely. Like, I think the concept or the heart of that argument will stand. It's just the implementation, the cost effectiveness, and the political aspect. I think that's mostly in contention.
So I'm sharing here, Troy Tesla. Like, he's actually, I wouldn't quite say Tesla bear, but he's been bearish on Tesla somewhat for a while. He still posts a lot of Tesla content. I guess he doesn't own the stock or trade it or anything, but this is what he had posted. And I want to get your reaction to this. Scenario one, so we'll know within 24 hours. We should know very soon what this is going to mean. Only restrict eligibility for now, such as the income limit or vehicle price, which certainly could be done through PIN. Scenario two, restrict eligibility now and announce that Congress will cancel the tax credit. 6 months is probably not accurate. That's going to be in October when the fiscal year actually starts. It's possible to do beforehand. It's kind of unprecedented. So probably October is more likely. or announce that he wants Congress to cancel the 7,500 tax credit within 6 months, but don't restrict eligibility. So obviously 3 would be best for deliveries this year. Easy math. People would say, hey, this is going away, but we have more time, especially while the refreshed, the Juniper, the Model Y is out. Like I and probably many other people plan to buy that vehicle. If it means like saving $7,500, like even those that are thinking of buying a vehicle in a year or two, like, oh man, $7,500 if I buy it this year, absolutely. So that'll hurt, future deliveries somewhat. But which of those do you think is going to be the most likely? Any?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure, right? It's all speculation. I think with regards to the $7,500 tax credit, we've talked about this before, and in previous conversations, we mentioned how, first of all, I don't think anything's really I don't think it moves the needle in a big way for Tesla. And then secondly, it's going to probably hurt others disproportionately. Maybe this is me putting on my rose-colored glasses for this company in particular, but I do think that it being the number one player in that vertical in the EV space, it has some brand recognition that provides you a little bit more price elasticity than you would have otherwise had. And it's across the board, right? It's not like, hey, I buy a Neo and I get $7,500, or I buy a Tesla and I don't get that, right? It's EV versus ICE, right? So that affordability is one aspect, but then again, to my earlier point, I think these policies are just going to get revamped in general, and we don't know what's going to happen. You have to be really naive to think that if he's going to make any policy like this that's severely going to affect Tesla, that Elon's not in the discussion.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like even if there's been no agreements or anything, it's kind of the way things work. Is you got a friend that helped you get elected, you're going to reach out and be like, hey, we're thinking about doing this. What do you think? And you don't have to do that, but you can ask. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I hope not. And I do think that we'll know very, very soon here. If not today, it'll be this week. But probably the best way to do that is really put that back into Congress's hands, where they can either do that at the beginning of the fiscal year, so October 1st, or just wait until next year. Either of those scenarios, I think, are really, really bullish for Tesla. Like you said, Tesla's competition are ICE vehicles, not other EVs. So I don't think this really crushes the competition. It crushes future potential competition of EVs somewhat. But I don't think that this is bullish at all, that it's going away. But it doesn't kill Tesla. It doesn't break the thesis. The thesis is really autonomy, and we're seeing a lot of indications that that's well under track. So we'll have to see. They'll give us an update in Tesla earnings too, which is not that far away. So that'll be nice. So you want to talk the meme coin?
Well, just as a last point, on that last topic, I don't know which scenario would even be better for Tesla, right? Them removing it for all their competitors, Tesla which is similar to how in 2022 you had this margin compression conversation with regards to Tesla, that it was a war of attrition, that Tesla was hurting their own sales or their own profitability, let's say, but everybody else was essentially going bankrupt as a result of trying to keep up. And so if I were Elon advising Trump on this, and I mean, we know for sure that he did advise Trump on this, I don't even know if I would prefer the 7,500 to go away altogether to disproportionately hurt my competitors relative to my company, or whether I'd want to keep it. And I mean, look, the whole mission, which is the altruistic macro vision, is, hey, we want to make EVs accessible for everybody, and we want to eventually, the war is against ICE, and the war is not against each other in the EV space. And that's all sunshine and rainbows. But at the end of the day, you're running a business here, and you have to be the number one player in EVs, right? If Rivian was on their heels, or if Neo was on their heels, or whomever, his stance might change on that. So all that to say, I don't necessarily know what's going to happen. I know that I'm safe having a sizable Tesla position simply because I know that the CEO of that company is in the room when these decisions are made. And guess who's not in the room? The CEOs of all the other EV manufacturers out there.
Yeah.
Okay, now we can jump.
All right. So, well, I'll pull up the poll that I did because I thought it was pretty interesting on the meme coin. Give me 1 second. Okay, go ahead and throw that up, please. All right. So I just asked folks to vote here, and it's only 700 votes, so definitely not scientific. But what people were thinking, I was mostly curious because I did vote for Donald Trump. It's the first time I ever voted for him. Don't regret that vote, but I was curious if there's fellow Trump voters that looked at this and were like, "This is not great." And that's the case. 21% said that they voted Trump and thought that this was awesome. The meme coin was great. 46.1%, and I can't vote for so I'm not included in that, but I'd be voting for that too. Voted Trump and thought this was terrible. Number didn't vote and thought it was awesome. Those might be international folks. I'm not sure. Or didn't vote and thought this was terrible. So like the vast majority have concerns, and I likewise do as well. My take is right here, but bottom line is, I don't think the president of the United States should be involved in something like this. Constitutionally speaking, probably 90% of what the president should be doing are figurehead related activities. That's not the case these days. There's a lot of executive orders, a lot of legislation by the pen of the president. So I know that's still enshrined in the Constitution. It's just not been interpreted that way in a long time. But certainly a lot of what they still do is figurehead like. And one thing that we really don't need any of, or even more of, are meme coins. But there's going to be meme coins out there. They'll be created by whoever. But I think the president of the United States being involved at this level, and with Melania, and there's some others that the same wallet actually ended up creating, man, it's not exciting, except that it signals lighter regulation on the crypto market, which under Gary Gensler was just all about enforcement and everything. So I don't love this at all. I wish that coin didn't exist. President Trump, when he was at that crypto event, it'd be nice if it was like, oh, we're gonna do this with Bitcoin, or I'm gonna buy $1 million with Bitcoin, or $1 billion just right now, and just show you guys how it's done, or find some legitimate projects that I have just a couple of altcoins, but there's some really good ones that have very interesting real world ramifications. If you backed one of those, or he said, hey, I like this basket, or even just did none of this at all, like that would be so much better than what we have. So I'm not thrilled, not excited, even as a Trump voter, that he did something like this, and it feels very grifty. The other thing too is, like, if this is just, and some people said, oh, he's just having fun, it's a meme thing, it's not a big deal. If he'd announced it and said any money that we make off of this is going to go to help the LA disaster relief with the fires, or the disaster relief in Asheville, or to pay back some of the national debt, fine, whatever. But that's not the case. It seems like that, and I know pretty much 95% of elected people do some measure of grifting in the Oval Office. I mean, I don't have blinders on my eyes, but like, being this brazen, it's just, it's terrible.
Look, man, I'm actually surprised that you would say that. I'm actually shocked that, as an American, you of all people don't want your president making a meme coin and rug pulling people. Like that is the American way. No, I'm just kidding. I think it's horrible too. I don't like it. I just think that it just discounts so much credibility that he's been trying to build on the legitimacy of the crypto industry in general, because by criticizing Gensler in the stance that Gensler took on crypto, and by saying, hey, we want the US to be crypto first, and even all the way down to the recent policy around saying, hey, we want to make an America first ecosystem with XRP and Solana and whatnot. Like that's all good. But then you kick that all down the drain when you launch your own shitcoins and they're pump and dumps, right? Because the moment that the second coin launched, the Melania coin, everybody sold off the Trump coin. And so I don't know. It's such a shit show, man. Because on the other hand, then you had the other clip around him at a rally talking about like how we rigged the election. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? Like, stop throwing away all of this goodwill. And immediately after Gensler is like out, essentially, like they don't even wait a month. They just do this immediately, right? Um, it's just, I think it hurts the credibility. I think it hurts the legitimacy, not only of himself, his administration, but the entire crypto space as a whole. And it's a rallying cry for people like Gensler and people who are pro regulation in crypto to say, hey, look, we told you so. And it gives them more legitimacy because you're essentially rug pulling people. And you can't have the the regulation in essence exists for a good purpose, which is to make sure that people don't get hurt. Now, of course, there's negatives there too because you have overregulation that stifles innovation. I get that, but it can't just be the wild, wild west because then people won't have any trust, and you need that trust to have adoption. And so you can't push out, Gensler and say, "Hey, we're going to usher in a new age of America, crypto being a leader in crypto," and then do the do the exact thing that these guys have been harping against. It's a horrible look, and especially you can't do it if you're the freaking president of the United States. Like that's an even worse. Like I was hoping that he got hacked because then he has some plausible deniability around saying, well, it wasn't me. I got hacked. I have no association with this. And that's even from a legal perspective, let alone from, a moral and an ethical perspective. It's just a bad look all around. But I mean, this is a person who, over the course of his campaign, has funded his campaign with like selling sneakers and selling NFTs and selling all kinds of little, grifts, I want to call them, because I mean, like they're limited campaigns of something that has no real value. But I get that because that was a way that people could donate to a campaign and it served some type of higher good. You can't just launch this thing on the eve of your inauguration and it's down like 50% now. It's just,
Yeah,
I don't know. It's not a good look.
and like the frustrating thing is that like if this was a one-off, like a NFT or something stupid, like who cares? Or election related, like I don't really care. The thing is, this really opens up the floodgates, I think, for a lot more meme coins of this sort, because people will be like, well, if the president's grifting and doing this, we're already having that, but it will accelerate. And on that, well, okay. So the other piece of that too is, what if Trump now has a vested interest in pumping this coin, and so that comes out in really weird and inappropriate ways, like even more so. Like, can you imagine that there's some sort of regulation where instead of having and I don't think this will happen, but that he's trying to push through a strategic reserve, not of Bitcoin, but of Trump meme coins for the United States. Oh my God, things like that can happen. And I don't know, man. I'm so unhappy with this. My question though to you is, so this, I think we both kind of agree and line up on this, and I'll talk about like Robinhood offering that on their platform a little bit later with the guys on Robinhood Weekly. But do you think that this causes a market top to come sooner for crypto? And if so, when do you think that? What are we looking for in that market top for crypto specifically?
I mean, look, man, these are the signs of a toppy market, is mass euphoria like this, where somebody goes to sleep investing $1 million in Trump coin and wakes up with like 300 million the next morning. Like that's a pretty euphoric market that generally has signaled that, hey, we are closer to the top than we are in the build-up stage. We know that right now. I mean, you can make an argument, right? Because there's so many unknown factors that fuck with the current Bitcoin market cycle that, you can make an argument as to where you are in that cycle, because generally you'll have Bitcoin pump and then you'll have altcoins pump afterwards, and that capital will flow from one to the other and capture those gains, and then you'll go into another crypto winter. And right now, I mean, you have Bitcoin putting up all-time highs again, like I think it was like 108 or 109 last night, and you have all of this stuff happening in the alts, like Solana broke 250, and so you have both these things happening simultaneously. The only difference is you have this cycle, so many external catalysts that are driving these anomalies in the market. And so it's really anybody's guess as to where it could go. Normally, if we were talking in a vacuum, all things aside, I would say, hey, we're in altcoin season, like it, well in altcoin season. And you're going to see more and more of these things. Like I remember couple months ago when we were talking about that 14-year-old kid that rugged everybody from like his bedroom. Do you remember this?
Yeah, that was ridiculous. But at least it wasn't the president of the United States,
Exactly. Exactly.
Like
it's a little bit worse.
The Hawk Tua girl, like that's
Squid
Coin. Yeah, I don't know if you remember that one from Squid Games.
Freaking
like there's a lot of this nonsense, and it's terrible. It shouldn't be happening. There will always be memes that's fine. People want to risk their own money, whatever. But like having the president of the United States say, I'm going to lead this degeneracy. Like, don't do that. Oh my goodness. So I think that it'll accelerate.
Just to answer your question. Yeah. How about a Telvis coin? I am so on board with that. Let's go Roy coin. Look, just to answer your question, I think that it's a slippery slope, because if I were looking at this from an outside in view, I would say that this is the first forage that tests the boundaries of what repercussions Trump and his family might have at having these pump and dumps. And so if there is no real repercussions for this, there's nothing really stopping him from continuing to pump DJT, from continuing to pump his other company which today invested $47 million in Bitcoin. So him being a free enterprise president who is so closely linked to corporate America runs a very, very high risk of him essentially having conflicting priorities between his own financial interests and the interests of the public. And I mean that from a regulatory perspective. And so you can't simultaneously have a president who reins in crypto scammers if he is one himself.
Absolutely. And see, one of the things too is like, if he's building businesses and things and benefiting that way, well, at least people have jobs and they're getting some sort of benefit. I'm not, arguing for trickle down economics, but with meme coins, like only a few traders and the person that created the coin usually benefit. Like it's a net negative on the economy. But it is showing. Somebody commented that we're still in a very much risk-on environment, probably increasing so. And as we get nearer to the top, wherever that is, I think this probably accelerates that topping. We're going to see more and more and more risk on. I see this around local tops, and I don't know that we're at a local top, but we might be, a couple of weeks out from one, and then have a pullback. Where people will look at like 40% or 50% year-over-year gains and like, oh, that's stupid. Why are you wasting your time with that stock or that coin when you can get like 500% in a single day from a meme coin? And you'll see a lot of comments like that from people that are just caught up in FOMO. FOMO is a real thing. All of us can fall victim to it. Just, be careful. But you'll see a whole lot of that, a whole lot of risk on environment. People, just saying that, like other things that you'll see. And this is, so the top for the crypto market, I think will come actually before the equities market, well before the equities market, just because there's an underlying push through AI and through deregulation that I think really will help grow the economy. But you'll see just gross speculation. A lot of people that maybe have some options and have some equities. When you see people like Tevis, he would not do this, but when they're like, hey, why am I even bothering holding stocks anymore when I could just have all options?
Dude, for real.
3 weeks out. hey, it might work out for somebody that does that, but they're going to get burned at some point. And then the whole Dogecoin millionaire, you remember that guy?
He still holds a lot of Doge, man.
He
But like,
does. And Doge is doing well, but man, like when you get to the point, and this is my plea to anybody that's watching this, if in this market cycle you get to the point and you're set for life, you've taken care of your family, you've won. It's okay to exit the game, or at least somewhat exit the game, be in less risky things. Please take some profits at some point. If you know it's a life-changing amount of money, it's okay to take some off the table. Case in point, I took some off. It's not life-changing money yet, but trajectory altering for sure. Palantir, I sold some on Friday, and I got those funds waiting to be deployed tomorrow. So all going into Trump. Just kidding. No, I'm not.
bro, can you imagine having your life changed by fucking Melania coin? Can you imagine you invest your net worth in Melania coin and you retire off the meme coin of the first lady of the United States? Like, if there's anything that I love about these things that happen, it's the memes that come out of it. And there's been some really good ones.
The memes, not the meme coins. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Dude, there was like, if you need any more proof around simulation theory, and Roy even showed you that chart that looks like Trump's face for Trump coin, it's that like Trump coin got what 14-15 billion in market cap. It even climbed higher than that. And people were saying on Twitter, they're like, what if he uses all this money from this meme coin that he launched to buy Greenland?
Yeah.
And I was just like, all right, I'm done with the internet for today.
If it goes high enough, just buy Canada. So
dude, I would buy that meme coin. I would buy that meme coin.
Yeah, it's I don't know. Like it's weird times, but it's just more of a sign of the times thing. It's still disappointing to me. And by the way, no shade and no hate on people. Like if you've made a bunch of money on Trump coin, good for you. That doesn't bother me at all. I don't blame you. Like if you want to trade it, if you want to jump into it, just be careful. With any meme coin, with anything, well, really anything at all, invest. I would encourage you to invest more in what you're most convicted in. But yeah,
current state of the trenches.
Yeah, it took me a minute to like figure out. Oh, that's supposed to be like a younger podcasting Donald Trump.
No, yeah, it's that kid, dude. It's that kid from months ago who launched his own coin, made like 30 grand, and just rug pulled everyone. And he did it all on stream, and then he got into trouble, and they just like photoshopped Trump's face on him.
Yeah.
All right, what's the next topic?
We could talk Nancy Pelosi's trades. I think that those are pretty interesting.
She bought Google, right? She bought Google calls, and then she bought NVIDIA calls. Hold on, let me pull it up.
Not NVIDIA, no. She bought one that I'm fairly interested in creating as a new position. I have a few names that I'm looking at. Won't be, anytime over the next few months, I don't think. But what I'm doing in my portfolio is just buying more of what I already have for the most part. Although I sold Palantir, or not all Palantir, but I sold, 23 or so percent. So that's, and it, as well as any inflows are going into other positions that I already own. So,
all right, here is, I did not tell Matt, just come on the stream, dude. Like we need to figure this out. Let me know. I can send you a link on WhatsApp and just come on the stream. Okay. This is what Nancy bought. So Nancy Pelosi filed new trades. She bought up to 100K in Tempest AI call options. I love the degen. It's like, it's all call options too. Vistra Corp, Google call options, $500,000, and then $500,000 in NVIDIA call options.
Yeah, I think that there were some others. Here's the,
You can pull it up.
From the actual filing. All right, if you want to throw that up.
Yep. You got to zoom though.
So Google bought actually call options, 50 call option shares. For her, it's like nothing. That's amount 250,000, 500,000, like chump change. Amazon likewise 50 call options with a strike price of 150. Little duplication there, and it's interesting for me to see this that she's shifting away some, not all of her shares, but selling a good chunk of Apple. That's 5 to 25 million. It's funny, 31,600 does not have that big of a
What is
range.
it? What's he selling? Oh, Apple.
Apple, 31,600 shares were sold of Apple.
I'm not surprised, man. She's here to make money, not retain money.
Yeah. Did I get that right? Yeah, no, that's correct. She sold that. NVIDIA sold 10,000 shares. NVIDIA exercised. So part of the selling of NVIDIA is she exercised 500 call options on the share price of $12 with an expiration of 2024. And of course, a little bit more NVIDIA movement too, but that one is a little bit older. So actually, these ones are not brand new. These ones are Alphabet and Amazon.
She didn't buy call options. She exercised them, right?
For NVIDIA. That one actually dates, that is January. So that is recent, but yeah. Well, so the exercise of NVIDIA call options, that was in December 20th. The buying of shares was, it was a small amount for NVIDIA, was actually today too, or not today, the 14th. So yeah, she's long big tick, short Apple, and that's, I mean, I don't know if it was with you, with Tanner, with Amit, but we were talking about this. That I think maybe it was Tanner that said this initially, but would be an interesting pair trade is short Apple and long anything else in the Mag 7.
I mean, yeah, like I think that's consensus at this point. You don't have to really be a genius to know that Apple is going to be lagging behind. It's also the reason why I sold Apple in the summer. If you remember on the bootleg, I picked it up at 165-ish, and I said, hey, look, Apple hasn't published their AI plan yet. I sold it around 220 for like a little 4-month trade. And like I said on Friday, like I think I would be buying Amazon all day, every day over Apple. I think Google is emerging as a stronger and stronger pick just because of how undervalued it is. So flowers to Mr. Matthew Farley. And, I don't think it's a crazy thing. The thing that I'm more interested in Nancy's trades is like the Tempest and then the other like smaller companies, because those are the ones like anybody can buy the Mag 7 and be fine. And you don't have to be a genius about it. They're the biggest companies in the world. But if you buy these like little niche companies and then news comes out, that's when, these people get a wrap. But
there's not many pure AI plays yet on the market. I think IPO season will heat up over the next couple of years. We'll see a lot of those startups in small companies enter the public markets, and some will do quite well, and some will be little more than a ticker symbol. But that's kind of what happens. But that's one of the reasons why Palantir has done so well as a stock. Phenomenal company. They're killing it as far as execution, but the market is just craving more exposure to AI. And where are you going to get it? Well, you can get some exposure from hyperscalers, from chip manufacturers as well. Those have already run a lot though. And if you want software AI, you have Palantir and then a whole bunch of little speculative names, and they're not the same. So, it's been really a benefit as a Palantir shareholder. Somebody had mentioned, if everybody's bearish on Apple, is it time to buy? Well, it's less than 10% off its all-time high. So I would say no. But I mean, you do you. If you think that there are some bullish catalysts on Apple, like if Apple fell to like, $120 or something stupid like that, I'd be interested.
Yeah, obviously,
because they're going to be around a long, long time.
Even they're buying back
lagging innovation. And you mentioned that they hadn't published their AI plan. They have.
No, but when I bought them, I mean they hadn't.
Okay.
They were the last one of the MAGA stocks to publish their AI plan. But
yeah, and a lot of that is
just real quick, right? To get another perspective, because I don't want to leave him backstage. The man who only joins my stream when I give him props, but otherwise shit talks on chat all day long, Mr. Matthew Farley.
It's too fun to just not troll in the chat. I mean, because every Monday, Tuesday, apparently this stream is going on, but I have to bitch and complain to get an invite on WhatsApp. But it's actually pretty interesting. Once I finally saw that I received a response message on WhatsApp through Tariffs, all the messages that had been sitting there with one single check mark magically had 2 check marks, and they were
yeah. Just don't give me that shit, Matt. Last time I called you and you didn't pick up, and then you send me some like really weird messages, and I'm like, which I'm not gonna read out on stream. But
The voice note was perfect though.
Maybe Tevis is shorting Meta, and that's why he doesn't want to use WhatsApp.
You know, that's right. I'll say every time I message Roy, he responds. So Roy's a real good guy.
Listen, man, I can kick you. You know, what's your take on Google and get the fuck out of here? Let's go.
Google, good long term. It's exciting to see that everyone's kind of doing a reverse, right? Early 2023, it seemed like early 24, it seemed like everybody was against it. They thought it was going to zero. It went from 150 back down to 115, 120. I continued to add. I saw through it. Although I was remaining, and I still am somewhat conscious of the fact that there is some sort of toxic culture within Google / Alphabet that gives me a little bit of a pause. But it seems like with some of what's going on, maybe some of that posturing that Sundar has been doing over the past 2 quarters, some of that might be kept at bay, and let's just hope that that continues. But I just think that it's a complete powerhouse. I don't think people give it complete credit. They're making about $100 billion in cash flow from operations per annum. They're buying about $65 to $70 billion worth of stock. They've erased about 15 to 20% of the stock outstanding over the past 3 to 4 years. There's a lot of great things I can mention that I've talked about in my Seeking Alpha article, which reminds me, Stephen would probably say, Matt, when's the last time I read a Google article? It's been too long. You should probably write another one. So he's probably right. I should do that. But yeah, great to be on the stream. Appreciate you reading through the trollingness on the chat and inviting me on.
Matt, I like your shirt, man.
Thank you. I took a what's the word I'm looking for? Pointer from you. I was like, you know what? What would Tevis wear?
I don't know about that, but I like the shirt. Guitar in the background. You need to hang up that picture, but other than that, looking good.
A bunch of Pokemon boxes back there. Yeah.
Are you in Texas right now, or you don't have to?
In Texas.
You are.
Yeah, in Texas.
You ready for what's coming?
No, actually. So believe it or not, I still need to go on a trip. I have plenty of like drinks and stuff. So for anybody that's aware, we're going to get hit with a couple inches of snow, which is a rarity. The entire city is going to shut down here in Texas. So it's not like North Texas towards like the Panhandle and stuff where they get a little bit more, but anyway, I think that's what Roy's referring to. And so I made the mistake of going on HEB to look at time slots where I could pick up, and everything is booked until like Wednesday. And so I was like, all right, they're actually going to make me go into the grocery store and actually shop. That's for the poors. But I guess we're gonna have to do it. But the garage is filled with stuff. I always keep a couple plastic bottle containers just in case there's ever a hurricane or anything, and I need to throw it in the back of the truck and get out of Dodge. But so I have plenty of water and stuff. I just need to maybe get some like non-heatable in case we lose power groceries like cereals and some baked beans, stuff like that, just in case we lose power. I don't think we will, but
no, don't forget to buy a bunch of Celsius to pump that for Tevis.
Can I answer this real quick? Tevis, as the Joby expert, can you explain what they do? I was told you're a massive shareholder. Great question, Brian. They print money, bro. They make money and their share price goes up. That's what they do. Thanks. I don't actually own them yet. That's the funniest part.
Dude, I had to buy freaking Block, and I loathe it so much. And I even sold $100 worth of Sofi to make it even more painful to do that.
Yeah. Tanner said, "Oh yeah, you have to own it now," and I was like, "No, I don't." Like I discovered I had free will. I was like, "I'm not gonna fucking buy it. I don't have to do shit."
Serious question for both of you. You guys have over 200 people watching. How is there no Celsius sponsored like piece on the lower right or lower left of this stream?
Hey man, have you seen me? Who would want to give me money? Really?
Look at those good looks. Those Eastern European good looks. Who wouldn't?
No.
Honestly, I on a serious note, like Celsius does still do like that kind of sponsorship. You should reach out to us.
I drink it on every stream, free publicity. I'm just saying.
You should literally just to like irk them, just because I'm sure there's somebody on Celsius that like looks for streams to potentially sponsor, right? You should just always have a post-it note over like the actual, because I think about that all the time too. I'm like, I'm drinking Dutch Bros on the stream and they're eating it up. They're like, this guy, he's pumping our stock. Obviously, shout out to Dutch Bros, we're up 100%, but it's interesting. I think about, if you have brand ambassadors that look at the stream, they're like, why pay him? He's already drinking it.
That's right.
I guess. Yeah.
It's one of those things. It's like, will Robinhood ever sponsor like Hood Weekly or any of us three? Like, we already talk about Robinhood all the time, so why would they?
Hey man, if I switch to Red Bull, you'll see how much business they lose, and then we'll see who has leverage over who. How about that? These 200 people that are watching, these guys buy a lot of Celsius collectively. So
2 inches is very powerful here in the state of Texas, I'll tell you. But yeah, what was I going to say? Sorry to completely derail. I know you guys are having a very intricate chat about the inauguration, what stocks that everybody's buying. We kind of made the transition to Celsius. Do either of you have Celsius in the portfolio?
No, not interested.
You said you did, Tevi?
Yes.
Big position or not so much?
No, like less than 0.5%, like 0.4%.
Okay, so it's a small one. Okay.
You own some, I think, or
I did start. Yeah, I did start accumulating under 40. So it's not a very big position, 400 or so shares, and I think I have some calls, some longer calls. But I'm very optimistic that this fourth quarter is being oversold by analysts. I think they currently have it about 320 to 330 million for revenue. And based off the conference call that they gave, the CEO was Fieldy was kind of looking more towards 343, 345 as the downside with a $15 million pressure. So even with that pressure, you'd be going at 330 million, which is the top end of analysts. So I don't know if they're intentionally just being cautious or if they got a heads up, because they did state that towards the end of November, early December, they would reach out to analysts again if that pressure was going to be realized, which would drive their revenues down to like 330 million. But anyway, I'm kind of curious if it'll turn around.
I entered Celsius for a little while just as a swing, and ended up not working out. I lost a little bit of money. It wasn't a big thing. And I was interested in looking at that, and I looked at that at the same time as Hims and a couple other names too as a long-term position. Hims, I thought of as a commodity, and I was wrong. And I saw their moat, and I'm like, hey, I'm going into this. Celsius, I thought maybe they had some market differentiation, and I feel like it's actually just a commodity. There is, a little bit of difference. But so, Matt, if you've not shopped in a grocery store in a while, because I know I've seen this at H-E-B, at Kroger, at Walmart, they don't do sales the same way, but even at gas stations, do yourself a favor, because you have to be at H-E-B anyway. Go through the energy drink aisle and just see how much there is, and go in the health section as well, because you'll also find, at least in H-E-Bs up here in this area, they are in the health section too, but there's also a lot of other energy drinks, like dozens and dozens of them, that are marketed exactly the same way, that fill that exact same niche. Alani Nu is the biggest one that's newest that I've heard from the most people. I drink a couple of those too. I actually like it a little bit better than Celsius. I don't love the product, and I'm just like, man, this is a massive commodity. That said, at some point, like, the market does oversell it. I don't know if they're at that point, and it just really depends on Pepsi inventories. We don't. That's a big unknown. So it could be a great swing for you, but I'm just not interested in going to this. So the other thing too that I'm seeing beyond just like having a sheer collection of names is I'm seeing a whole lot of sells in markets. And my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong in this, is that usually those, especially with the larger names, are not just the gas station or the store saying, hey, we're going to eat a loss here and sell this product and sell a bunch of it. They do to an extent, but usually these are agreements that they have in place with their vendors, and they say, okay, we're going to sell this, and in return for this, because there's going to be added a greater number of cells, we're going to eat some of that cost of the cell. You're going to eat some of that cost of the cell. And both Monster and Celsius, I drink Monsters. I like Monsters a lot.
I do too.
Yeah. I've seen so many cells on them, and a whole bunch of other energy drink names, to the point where I'm routinely, like, at least 1 or 2 weeks out of every month from at Kroger and also at HEB, I'm seeing prices as low as pre-COVID for energy drinks. And I can't imagine that being very positive for margins. Now, I know they have international expansion and all that, but I'm just crowded market. Others are definitely encroaching if they had a moat, in that same health space. And I'm seeing the potential for collapsing margins. Short term, they might be great, especially, the moment that headline reads like, hey, Pepsi inventories have largely been depleted, they're resuming rebuying. Yeah, it'll pump. That'll be great. We don't know when that is. And so myself, I'm just not touching it.
No, I can 100% agree with everything that you said, right? It's more of a commodity than it is like a moat like business. And so I agree with you 100% there. Like you stated, you go to any grocery store or gas station, you see Alani's there, you see Ghost, you see C4, you see Reigns, which is owned by Monster, you see Monster themselves, you see Red Bull, and I'm probably missing some things.
Let me ask you guys this. I'd love your opinion, both of you, on this, because I'm trying to suss out what level of brand loyalty these types of products have. For example, if I go into a 7-Eleven and I really want a Coke Zero and they don't have it, the max that I will, accept is maybe a Diet Coke. Not Diet Pepsi, not Coke, not, anything else really. If I'm wanting that product. I think Buffett also talked about this quite a bit when he talked about candy bars. He was saying, hey, look, if I really crave a Kit Kat and they say, hey, is a Snickers bar an okay substitute? He would say no. And he would attribute that to being one of the moats of that business because he has brand loyalty in that product. And I guess what I'm trying to suss out for you guys is like in the energy drinks category in general, is there any brand loyalty? Like if you really love a particular type of Monster and it doesn't exist, do you go to the other flavor of Monster? And if no Monsters exist at all, do you go to Celsius or Red Bull or whatever? Because for me, for example, now I'll go into a convenience store and I'll look for Celsius. And if one doesn't exist, like if they're sold out or whatever, I'll probably go to Red Bull. And that's pretty much it. I don't really go to Monster. I don't really go to Rockstar. I don't go to any of the other ones just because these are the tastes that I'm accustomed to.
So my preference is Monster. And on the trip out to Phoenix and back, we stopped at a lot of convenience type stores and loaded up on caffeine because long drive, and plus I drink probably too much caffeine anyway. So my preference is Monster, but there's a price where, especially in gas stations, but also in stores as well, if something that I've never heard of is like half the cost of a Monster, and it's like, well, I'll try that. So I've tried Prime for that reason before. They had some sort of weird knockoff energy drink. I don't know if it was a specific to I don't even remember what it was, and they were not very good. But I bought a couple of those because I'm like, hey, these are like less than half the price of a Monster at this ridiculous gas station. Like Monsters were like $5 or something. I'm like, I'm not paying $5 for a Monster. Like, forget that. I bought a Celsius along the way too. I don't love Celsius. Peach Vibe is pretty decent. But Monster is like a 10 for me, and Peach Vibe is like a 7. But I bought that 7 just because I was like, okay, it's like $1 less than the others. Good enough. I'll go ahead and buy that. And so I have a strong preference, but there is a point where like these sales happen, and I'll try something that's new. Another time, I was offered like a free Prime. Like I was going to a basketball game, they were handing them out outside, and they're like, hey, go and try one of these. I'd never drank one actually before that time. And I'm like, actually, these are pretty good. So Monster though, absolutely. Yeah, I'm curious about, and I see a couple of comments on there. If you guys drink energy drinks, at what point do you settle? Are there some that you'll settle with, or you're just like, hey, energy drinks are all the same, I'll buy them just for the caffeine?
I will say Monster is my favorite as well. But
that's right, brother.
Yeah,
I'm just going to start a poll.
What's your favorite kind of Monster, Matt?
I drink the blue one, which I guess is the, I don't know, low carb one, I guess. I don't know if that's what it is.
I'm all with the zeros, yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, they're all pretty good.
The white, I agree. Like the white one is really, really good. That's probably my favorite of the diet ones. I like the peach one actually too. So I didn't at first, but that's grown on me.
Yeah.
They had a pineapple one. The gold one? Do you remember that?
The gold one.
Yeah. Oh, it was so good, man.
I'll have to look for it.
It was hard to find. If you see it, yeah, I get that.
Okay.
Do you guys, when you guys go shopping for energy, I mean, this is turning into like a customer interview, but I'm curious, when you guys go shopping for energy drinks, not necessarily at the grocery store, but more so like a convenience store, like you're going to consume it in that moment right there. In your mind, is it an association with coffee, like as a substitute for coffee, or is it like a completely different? Because for me, for example, I have coffee sometimes in the morning and maybe sometimes in the afternoon, but there's a very different mental association. Like I know they're both caffeine providers, but there's a very different mental association for me because I'll have a coffee, but then for me, Celsius is more so comparable to like a Coke Zero, for example. Like I'll have a Coke Zero, sometimes in the evening or whatever as like a soda or a pop or whatever you want to call it, and I'll choose between Coke Zero and Celsius, even though they're not like direct competitors. It would be more direct competitor for coffee and Celsius. So I'm really curious to hear from you guys. Like, what do you guys like? Let's say you're driving and you stop by a gas station. Do you go in looking for a coffee and get a Celsius or vice versa? Or is it a completely different association for you?
I'm not great to answer this because I don't drink coffee often. I did drink a lot of it on the trip just because family members make coffee. They offered, I'm like, sure. And my dad makes a pretty mean latte. So I had a number of those, what he calls poor man's lattes. So, but no, I'll drink energy drinks any time of the day. Not right before bed, but any other time, morning or noon. So it's my preferred source of caffeine. Sodas, sometimes too, tea sometimes, but I like caffeine in general. So there's multiple days in a week that I'll go without caffeine, and that's fine. But I prefer to be caffeinated up. Why not?
That's a good one. Yeah, I this may or may not help. I drink coffee when I need to be on, like mentally switched on, present, and needing to knock shit out. So generally speaking, that means at work. So if I'm just like at home or I don't necessarily need to get anything done at that moment, it'll be either soda or energy drinks. So for example, like if I'm working from home on a Friday and I don't necessarily need to be like in a bunch of meetings or anything of the like, I'm probably going to go and grab a Monster. Like this afternoon, taking it light this afternoon, I didn't go grab a cup of coffee. I was at the convenience store, and I grabbed a Monster instead. And then same thing if I'm on the weekends, like if I'm just kicking it, watching football games and stuff like that, I'll probably grab an energy drink rather than a coffee. But if I'm going into the office, I'll either go to Dutch Bros, get some sort of coffee equivalent, or we have a Starbucks licensed store at the bottom of UDOC headquarters here in Texas, and I'll grab the Starbucks, just regular, not like a fancy frou-frou drink, but just a black coffee. So anyway.
Yeah, ironically, I've had 2 drinks from Starbucks in the last month. So that's usually more than I drink in an entire year. But when you're invited by people, it's like, yeah, it's fine.
But the thought for me on Celsius, like you stated, I agree with what you were talking about from a qualitative perspective there, Roy. I think to me it was just kind of an oversold sort of territory, and my anticipation is that yes, the whole Pepsi disruption piece, I think, they're selling through now at this point. They're kind of, from what I was told, doing kind of 50-50, selling stale inventory and selling the actual new merchandise that Celsius is kind of producing. So hopefully revenues kind of go back on the up and up and eventually kind of return. But I don't think they're going to come back in 2025 and forecast out for like a 30% year-over-year growth. That might happen for international, but international is still less than $100 million a year business when the rest of the business is 1.3, 1.4 billion. So, I mean, we might be lucky to see sales grow to closer to 1.5 to 1.6 billion, but I don't really forecast out that you'll be seeing 2 billion for the next several years in terms of total sales. And so two things I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I think that for now it's going to be an opportunity for a quick trade. If things come out really well and it pops up to 45 or 50 bucks, in February, March, whenever they report, then I'll probably just take my money and run. There's other things that I'm kind of wishing I had money for right now to be able to put money into, but for now, I think it's like an easy win to potentially look at, and it might take a couple quarters for things to get back on track. But I don't, like you stated, think that it's going to show up and they'll end up with like $2 billion a quarter in the next in the next year for fiscal year 25 and massive growth comparatively. I just think the space is getting saturated. And to go back to your question about sales, there was some sales going on for Celsius in the local convenience store I go to. Same thing with Monster. They were selling 2 for $4, like you stated, hugely cheap comparatively to what they do now. I think you can generally get like a normal 16-ounce Monster for like $3 or maybe even more. So yeah, $2 for a can is dirt cheap. So kind of thinking about what your head's at, I think a lot of that is due to the fact that they have market share, they have the margins. Like I know gross margins for Celsius are in the 45 to 50% range. And so if you're able to get closer to that and be able to steal market share away, eventually, you eliminate some of the other players in the market and continue to grow market share. Eventually you can start to, over time, get your money's worth. And I think that it's more about revenue growth right now than trying to get net income margins up.
Yeah, and for me, it's a tough place simply because there's a lot of other players that are wanting to do the same thing and are borrowing from that playbook. And so I searched while you were talking for energy drink sales at Walmart. Like Alani Nu is 88 cents, freaking 88 cents. Now there's a shipping cost, but you can buy like 20 of them, and it's a $5 shipping fee. It's like ridiculous.
I think there is a psychological aspect though with these pricing strategies, because if you price it too low, it's going to signal that it's not high quality or that it's not healthy for you. Like that was the first thing that came into my mind when you said 88 cents. I was like, there's no way that it could be 88 cents and it's the more premium, like it's tastes better than a Celsius or a Monster. Like there is that psychological aspect where you only, I don't know, like it's just too cheap for it. Like my spidey senses start tingling because of how cheap it is.
I think we'll see more of that. And the thing is, you might like, well, maybe Alani Nu, like they'll go away, they'll fade away. Maybe they're desperate. Who knows? But there's so many like that, and it's like death by 1,000 cuts. Like if just like 5, 6, 7 of your competitors, and there's hundreds of energy drinks at this point. Like it's just pay attention to it, Matt, as you go around and walk around your HEB. Like they're everywhere. There's a Kroger that I went to, and I hate going into the store too, but sometimes you got to do what you got to do.
Damn poor, it's poor people activities. You got to pick it up at the
oh, it's so much nicer. But I think that there was just 5 or 6 entire aisles in the store where they didn't have energy drinks at the end cap or somewhere, and I'm like, this is insane. Like on the food side, like not like bikes or anything like that. So but no, it's crazy. It's crowded. And when you have that kind of pricing war, even if there is certain loyalty, like that's enough to get someone to try one. Oftentimes that's enough to be like, yeah, it's pretty comparable. I like it, or you don't like it, or whatever. But those kind of pricing wars tend to be bad for margins for everybody in the space. So unless you have an actual moat, and there's not, I don't think much of one here in the space.
Yeah, so, I think the one thing that might turn this investment for me, and I know I was just trying to change the topic potentially.
No.
But my thought process is I looked at year-over-year growth for Celsius, and that was not impacted. So by total earnings perspective, or total revenue perspective, fiscal year 23 and fiscal year 24 is going to be about flat, if not slightly above single-digit growth. Slightly above single-digit growth at a maximum. So I think they tracked for like single-digit. So I think anywhere between 5 to 9% is kind of where I'm thinking they'll end up. But international still saw for the first 9 months of 23 versus the first 9 months of 24, it was still up 35%. And so my hope is, and that did not seem to be impacted by the Pepsi distribution, obviously, because the majority of Pepsi distribution is US focused and maybe Canada focused, but the rest is somebody else. So the question that I kind of have is how much do we continue to see that growth? Is it going to continue at 35% for several years? Because if you're only at a $100 million run rate today, that might get you to 135 million in 25. It might get you to a $200 million run rate in 2026. But at what point is it actually going to show up? Like, is it going to eventually have a year where it's up 50, 60%, right? Where then you start to think about, okay, well, now we can have 500, 600 million. And that would start to add multiples on the actual market cap of the company if you actually get the 50% net interest margin, 50% gross margin, 25% net interest margin, net income margin. So that's kind of where my head is at. It's like seeing that hockey stick in international growth might be what ends up having me hold this longer term. But like I stated, I think this is only going to be a couple quarter hold for me until it kind of rebounds from the depths at where it's at today.
Yeah, and it could fall the other direction.
So let me just give you guys a little stat. So since we put up the poll 11 minutes ago, as of about 40 votes, 72% said they only stick with 1 to 2 brands, and 28% said I'll drink whatever brand it is. Now, of course, that's not anywhere near statistical significance. What I will also say is anecdotally, like, yes, you do have a high degree of exploration around people wanting to try new drinks all the time. But I think that there is some level of brand loyalty, especially considering that Celsius really came to prominence through the female demographic. And pretty much every female that I've spoken to on this topic says that they drink Celsius and that's pretty much all they drink because they don't like the taste or they don't like the how other drinks make them feel. Like, it feels lighter. It doesn't feel like it has as much carbonation. And I think there is something to be said about that because they're actively leaning into that demographic through all of their marketing campaigns, through all of their promotions, and it's clearly working for them. So I don't like it's going to be case by case for all these other companies that want to steal away market share. I'm not saying that they have an impenetrable moat as a business. It is commoditized to a certain degree because the switching costs are not high. I can literally go into a convenience store and for the exact same price, I can just try something new that there's a chance that I'll love more and they'll lose a customer. But, by that same token, I do think that that negative is also a positive for them because for all the people that are using Celsius today that might try, whatever the 88-cent one was that Roy mentioned, there's an equal, if not larger amount of people that are on Red Bull or on Monster today that can try Celsius. And Celsius is not the biggest player in the space. So I think that the switching costs, yes, they might hurt them because there's people that are on Celsius today that might go to others. But if Celsius is like the number 3 player in the space, then the switching costs are probably going to help them because the number 1 and the number 2 player are going to bleed out more people than Celsius will bleed out. Again, that's just like, I'm just trying to logic it from the most base case scenario, right?
Yeah, I'd personally bet against that, but we'll see. I know that there is a certain amount of loyalty, but that can change over time too. So the one area that I do see them doing quite well in is the powders, the drink mixes. Those, at least, I pay attention to these as I go through the stores. And the thing that was actually the most bullish thing regarding Celsius that happened, my wife ended up buying some of and she doesn't do caffeine very often. She doesn't do energy drinks, but she bought some of the little powder things of Celsius. So yeah, I don't know. I don't think she'll buy any more, but just her trying it, she's like, yeah, I heard these are good. I don't know who she heard it from, but it wasn't me. I'm pumping Monster, not Celsius.
Why do you think Monster doesn't? Do you think it's the carbonation side? They don't want their So I think that's one thing is Celsius has sparkling and it has still, I guess if you want to call it still, flavored products, whereas Monster, they only have carbonated, and it feels like extra carbonated in my opinion, but which I don't mind.
That's why I like it.
Yeah, it gives you the kick. I love that.
It's so good. I think that they just know that that's a niche, and there's a lot of other entries too into that market, and I don't think Celsius, is the first to make that leap, but Alani Nu has actually a lot of products doing the exact same thing. Like they're basically a 1-for-1 competitor. Like their branding, their names, like just they're Celsius basically. That tastes a little bit better. C4 is another one that I see them going after that market too, and also a little bit more on the workout side. Like they have a pre-workout powder and stuff. I've not tried any of these, but they exist. They're out there. But yeah, there's a lot of new ones too that are going after that. Celsius White Claw.
Yeah, Celsius is like
right?
the White Claw for energy drinks. I agree with that. Like White Claw is like a kind of a girly drink. It's like what do you call them? Coolers. Anyways, I was going to say something on that, but now I totally lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, one of the reasons why I like Celsius relative to the others is because like I used to drink Red Bulls and I didn't really like the aftertaste that they left in my mouth. And then Celsius, I feel like has a much more muted aftertaste. And so I don't know. It does feel lighter. Maybe there is something to be said about that. Anyways, we've exhausted the Celsius topic. Shall we move on to something else?
I think that's a good place to wrap. Although, if there's any questions that you guys have, we'd be glad to answer them.
We have gathered some questions, Roy, and I would like to. And if anybody has more questions, we will be now doing our rapid fire question portion of the Bootleg Weekly featuring Matt Money. All right. Would Roy have preferred to receive Jovi instead of XYZ? The most important question first.
Matt, do you know what XYZ is?
I don't.
Block changed their ticker from SQ to XYZ. So
got it. Was it official? When's it?
I don't know when it officially goes through, but any of my block related posts are putting XYZ as well, and I hate it so much. Yes, I would prefer Joby over XYZ.
Really?
That's how much I hate owning block.
Wow, that is a big statement. Is it Roy Crossroads or Crossroads Roy? The important question.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Yes. SoFi price direction this week up.
We'll let Matt, our expert on SoFi, take that.
Is that on Tuesday? Tomorrow? The earnings?
No, a week from now.
Monday.
Monday.
Okay. You guys got me excited. I know. Let's see, man. I just want to give a shout out to Tevis because I do give a lot of crap about a lot of things, and it's all in jest. For anybody that's listening, I love Tevis, and it's just good old boy humor. But the thing I want to say is I want to thank Tevis for getting me involved in SoFi. It's actually one of my larger holdings now. So we'll see where it goes. I'm bullish about the company. I think they're doing the right things. I still have some things that are even better ifs. And if I had the opportunity to talk to Nodo, to get things like the wealth management side of the business under wraps, and also, would love to see kind of I was anticipating when I first invested in SoFi back in IPO B, or was it IPO C, whatever it was. It was an E. Thank you. I was anticipating them to take more of like a Robinhood approach, and then that kind of fell apart. And I think that Robinhood has been able to really collect a lot of that market share from the youth. And I think that that's a huge missed opportunity that SoFi might have missed. However, they have taken a little bit more of the traditional banking side of things, and they're obviously doing great strides with respect to that and continuing to climb the total assets under holding, which I think, has put them in the top 50 banks in the US now. I forget. You guys are better at tracking that stuff than I am.
Their number, they're in the 60s, 67. 60s.
So they're climbing pretty quick. But back when you first saw either you or Roy keeping track of it, it was in the hundreds. So the fact that they're moving at that pace is pretty interesting, and I'm sure they'll slow down as they get closer to the 40s, 30s, 20s, etc. and they'll probably never catch up to the top 10 in at least my lifetime, but continue to do extremely well in that perspective. But I think that they could really differentiate themselves if they had at least opened up a Robinhood like sort of branch of their business.
You know, the invest platform exists, Matt. It exists. It's the best I can say for it.
It exists.
I do think
We're on the same page.
Yeah, I do think. I kind of wonder if Noto alluded to some products that they had developed that they weren't ready to launch just because the macro wasn't there yet, and I wonder if one of those is related to the invest side, simply just because Gary Gensler, SEC, is just like you saw the lawsuits and everything. You know, even suing PayPal too, where there's a fine, but there's like 30 different institutions that were slapped by similar things, and it's weird because the SEC just went so heavy enforcement, very poor guideline, very poor communication. When you have like 30 something companies that all are guilty of the same thing, that's the fault of the SEC. That's not the fault of the companies at that point. If it's like one or two, it's like, well, those guys maybe are just sketchy, you're not paying attention. So I do wonder with the Trump coin that we talked about earlier, with Gary Gensler being out, he resigned before he could get fired, which is very funny. Kind of wish he stayed around so Trump could say you're fired. But it's very clear that regulations are going to be lighter, and I'm curious if SoFi, they had a fully developed crypto platform that they, as an agreement with being able to obtain that banking charter, had to divest from. Now they did it a little bit earlier than was expected. I'm curious if they fire that up relatively soon. Once guidelines are published, it might take a year, maybe a little bit longer, maybe a little bit less. But I'm also curious if they have other invest products that they were just waiting for a change in administration, a change in the SEC. And the last little bit of that is Noto even alluded, as far as his personal preferences, he didn't prefer Donald Trump, but he said, yeah, Trump is much better for SoFi. And I expect that may have something to do with that. So, but it's been a laggard, undoubtedly. I'm just kind of curious what they do with it. If they keep it as it is, that's not too exciting.
Yep. Next question. Are you doing any options on SoFi at the moment? Yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'll get your guys' take on this for just a couple minutes. For SoFi earnings. So first of all, let me just ask you guys this. Yes, no, are you doing any options for any earnings at all in this earnings season over the next 2 weeks? And then we can go into the SoFi specific one.
Yeah, not my style for earnings, no.
Plenty, not specifically for earnings, but just plenty of options in general. Yeah.
And so for me, for SoFi, what I'm conflicted in is I don't mind owning the stock. I'm actually happy to own more. And I don't really have a, strict like price at which I want to own it because I know it's going to go higher throughout the year. At the same time, like I don't want to go crazy on it. And so right now I do want to play SoFi earning. I have been accumulating shares through cash secured puts over the past couple of weeks, which I've been tweeting about. And so I have been building up a sizable position over the past couple of weeks. And right now, really for earnings, what's on my mind is I either want to do covered calls before the results, covered calls after the results, if it pops, or cash secured puts at a high strike price before the results, or just cash secured puts after the results. Like I don't care either way if I let go of shares, like if there's shares that I just bought, 2 weeks ago, so I'm fine. And if I buy more shares, then I'm still fine. So like either way, like I'm fine on all positions. It's just I'm probably going to do some this week before earnings, just in case we have that earnings pop. Like I already have covered calls at $20 for January 31st for like a relatively small portion of the position. And then the other thing I really want to do was cash secured puts at like 16 or 16.50 or something like that. So it's at the money essentially for earnings, just because if it does pop, then I can close those out for a hefty profit. And if it doesn't pop, then, I can essentially buy more shares. But yeah, just curious to get your thoughts.
Yeah, the only play that I'm actually considering for earnings as far as options and specific earnings, like Matt, I had options on a number of positions, but I like to give myself as much time as I can, and have those pretty conservative, close to the current price. But since I sold a chunk of Palantir, I've been thinking about actually selling cash secured puts into earnings, and if it falls, well, great. I locked up some gains anyway. If it doesn't, then just free premium. The premiums are pretty good.
Pretty good, yeah. Especially because it's over earnings, right? You get jacked up premiums, and like, dude, like even at the money, like I don't know, you get really really great premiums, and if it's a stock, like I know people hate on options, but I would still be buying these. Like I'm only doing it on 3 stocks now. I'm only doing it on like HIMS, SoFi, and Tesla. Really, I'm not even doing it on other ones anymore.
I might do that on HIMS too. When is their earnings, Tevis?
Beginning of February, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'm focused on like the next couple of earnings, Tesla and then SoFi. Which is like PayPal. I've not thought about too much, and HIMS is one of those two for earnings. So I want to own more HIMS, so that may be a good way to do that. It's very volatile. So
exactly right. Like for HIMS, I think HIMS has been my number one earner in terms of the premiums accumulated thus far, and honestly, man, for that stock, like I have really, really made a dent on my adjusted cost basis for HIMS, because it's just the premiums are always so freaking high. And like, yeah, I've gotten assigned a bunch of times, and I think I own, I own a sizable HIMS position in my separate account that I'm writing against, which is like $26 or so, and so then I'll just write covered calls on the other. So I'm just continuing the wheel on that, but SoFi too over earnings especially.
The thing that I've written on SoFi, so mid-December, I wrote some $13 puts, and I was getting about $1.25 for those contracts, and they expire in March 2025. So
nice.
they're still about 2 months out, but they're up about 61%. So the initial was about 877 is what I took in. I could close them out at 336, of course, if it opens up flat tomorrow. I do have some long calls just for January 2026 at the 10, just 2 of them. I forget what I did. I don't know if I wrote, I think maybe what I did is I took some of the money that I had gotten from this put contract that I wrote, and once it started to get into the money, sorry, not into the money, profitable, I think I took some of that premium and I bought these $10. Let me see. No, that's a lie. I bought these in September. Wow, I bought these in September 2023. Never mind. So these options are old. They're up 200%. So never mind. Forget about those. The only thing I will say, and I say don't follow me on this because this is somebody that has adjusted it and looked at it as a risk tolerance, and Tevis knows about this. I've been writing MicroStrategy puts, and like HIMS for Tevis, my MicroStrategy has been absolutely printing me money. But then again, that is with extreme risk that I don't expect anybody to potentially take on. You'll be potentially writing something and feeling like you'll be dumb to not write this contract. And then the next day, Bitcoin drops 10%. And next thing you know, you're puckering your butt because that contract is down $2,000. If you just had been stupid and said, oh, there's no way this is going to happen, right? And you write 4, 5, 6 contracts. Next thing you know, you'd be down, a crap ton of money and having a lot of obligations. So by no means do I recommend. Those things can get out of hand pretty quickly. And then I also have been rolling NEXT puts and kind of using that as a monthly sort of thing at the $7 range. I already have a pretty substantial position in NEXT. So I'm up about 50 or so % on that in the last couple months, but I would love to buy more if it happened to dip below 7. So just consistently every month I'll rewrite at the $7 put range, and hopefully just capture a little bit of premium, and hopefully one of these days it gets pulled back and I buy some more.
So I have one question that maybe we can end on. One other thing that stood out for me from the inauguration speech is Trump pledged to send astronauts to Mars. And so I'm curious on your guys' thoughts will we have an American on Mars first, or will SoFi get level 1 options? Which comes first?
I mean, that's a tough one, man. I don't know. It's a toss-up. Do you guys
Mr.
know
Rocket
when
Lab,
the
what do
year?
you think?
What was that?
What do you think? Astronauts, American astronauts on Mars first, or SoFi gets level 1 options?
So I just asked ChatGPT, and just to give you guys a little bit more data, the next Mars window is around late 2026, early 2027. So it will fall within Trump's presidency. So the question is, do we think SoFi options in the next 2 years? Like, it sounds like a really ridiculous, stupid question, but if you think over the next 2 years and SoFi is not really focused on level 1 options, like it could really be a toss up. We could put humans on Mars before we're allowed to sell options on SoFi.
It's sad that that's even like a remote possibility that we do have a person land on Mars first before, but yeah, it's whatever. We've talked about that. Well, Tevis, you want to wrap for us?
Yeah, I mean, I hate that we're wrapping under this bearish SoFi sentiment 5 days before earnings. But what I will say, and not to speak for Roy here, but I will do my absolute best to convince Roy for us to do another bootleg show on Wednesday, and hopefully we will see you there. Matt, you are more than welcome to either shit talk from the sidelines or to join us and chat about stocks.
Before we sign off, I know you guys both have places to be. Have you guys talked about what your 2025 stock of the year is?
I mean, mine's
do you have
Joby, but
Joby, heard it here first. What about you, Hot Roy?
I'm forced to unblock, and I might buy puts on it actually.
There you go.
No, I mentioned back in August when SoFi was like $7. I'm like, out of any stock that I even watch at all, and there's like 50 names, I thought that would outperform everything, and we're off to a pretty good start. So Robinhood has like surprised me. I knew the election was good for Robinhood. I knew the macro is very favorable for Robinhood, but like even year to date, we're up like 20 something %.
Yeah.
And they're about to print, quarter 4 earnings about 100% year over year revenue gain. Like it's ridiculous, and maybe over 100%. It's within like a coin flip. So yeah, that's the only stock that I bought yet. That changes this week, but this year I've only been buying Robinhood.
You're the man.
Matt, what's your 25? Just real quick, what's yours?
Two thoughts. So I guess like a one that I think is guaranteed to print in 25 is going to be Rocket Lab. I think a lot of people are saying it's already up however many %, but I think we're entering territory where if they get this medium launch vehicle up and some of the additional contracts that come with that, coupled with potential profitability in the fourth quarter, if not the first quarter of 26, then you'll have two very big catalysts that I think will shoot the stock upwards. And then second, depending on what executive orders Trump signs within the next few months, and then if things turn around at the DC circuit level, NEXT, which is an LNG export project, could see some massive tailwinds. Obviously, it's had a pullback based off the fact that people are thinking that it might be put on pause for quite some time, but they're still constructing it. And they're imminently going to sanction the Train 4, and they've started to get EPC, engineering procurement contracts out for Train 5 as well. So curious to see where that ends up. That might have some hair on it, though. They don't start exporting until 2027, early 2028. So that might fall into 2026 before it actually pops.
All right, that's a better note for us to end on. Thank you, everybody, so much for being here, and we will see you hopefully on Wednesday. But follow us on X so you're up to date on when the next stream is going to be. And happy golden age of U.S. prosperity. And that's it. Goodbye.
Thank you all. Bye.